Hello, and welcome to our latest episode of our Muscular Dystrophy UK podcast series, Muscles Matter. I'm Becca, and I'm your podcast host for today. I work at Muscular Dystrophy UK as the Stories Officer, and I live with SMA Type 2. We're excited to be producing today's podcast on the future of research and treatments in collaboration with the MAGIC Consortium project, in which we're a partner. MAGIC stands for Next Generation Models and Genetic Therapies for Rare Neuromuscular Diseases. The aim of MAGIC is to accelerate the development of gene therapy and genetic editing strategies that can make a real difference to people living with muscular dystrophies. Joining us today is Professor Francesco Saverio Tedesco, Clinical Professor of Neuromuscular Biology and Regenerative Medicine, and an Honorary Consultant in Paediatric Neurology at University College London. He's also the lead researcher for the MAGIC project and will be telling us more about the exciting work being undertaken. Along with Professor Saverio, we'll be joined by our in-house research communications expert, Dr. Charlotte Roy. Today we'll be discussing the latest developments in research towards treatments, what needs to be done to move these developments forward, how these developments might affect treatments for people living with the condition more widely, along with what surprising ideas could change this area in the future. So let's get started. Professor Saverio, it's great to be doing this podcast with MAGIC today. Can you briefly tell us a bit about yourself and about the work of MAGIC?
Thank you, Becca. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure. So you said most of the things already. So I work in three main places here in London. They are all connected to each other. I'm a professor at UCL and also a principal group leader at the Francis Crick Institute, which is closely associated with University College as a research institution. And then I do my clinical work at Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children in the Dubowitz Neuromuscular Center, caring for children mostly with muscular dystrophies, but with neuromuscular diseases in general. If I remember correctly, you asked me also to give you a little bit of an introduction on MAGIC, right?
Yeah.
So again, you've been great because you said already all the key things over there. This is a network, essentially a consortium, so a group of people from all over the world, several different countries, mostly European countries, but we also have partners from the United States and from Switzerland, for example. And we all have a common goal, which is to make use of newer systems and technologies that we now have to make mini muscles in a dish, like almost avatars of some specific muscle conditions that we can grow in the lab using special stem cells. And then on those type of systems, we can test new treatments, mostly gene therapies in our case, genetic strategies to target a number of muscle conditions, a lot on these new systems in the lab to go faster and potentially also to reduce the use of animal models to develop those treatments. The advantage is that we can have these avatars in a condition-specific fashion or even an individual-specific fashion. We can make muscles, mini muscles in a dish from different individuals with different conditions in a relatively fast way compared to previous technologies, and we can also take a lot of information out of those, even how the muscle contracts, for example, which is something we couldn't do using older systems.
Amazing, thanks so much. It's great to have you, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about that. And welcome, Charlotte. Could you briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Becca. It's lovely to be here today. So, yes, I'm Charlotte Roy. I'm Research Communications Manager here at Muscular Dystrophy UK. And my role is all about trying to make sure that people can understand the research in a really easy and accessible way. We know that science is happening all around us, so I want to make sure that those that can benefit from the science and research happening can really understand what's going on and the latest updates and developments. So this can happen from research happening all over the world, along with projects that we're funding here in the UK as well. And over the last 60 years, the investment has helped uncover genetic changes and biological pathways, which has helped pave the way for the development of new treatments and therapies. So the investment we have made as a charity in this space has made a real big difference. And while there's great progress for some conditions, we know that there's not enough progress for a range of other muscle wasting conditions. So that's why we're continuing to invest in this crucial research to speed up the progress so that everybody with a muscle wasting condition can find treatments that are benefit for them.
Definitely. Thanks very much, Charlotte. So, if we go to our first question, in the past 10 years, we've seen some really big breakthroughs in research for treatments for muscle wasting conditions. What would you say are the most significant developments in recent years, Saverio?
Well, you're perfectly right, Becca. I think in the last 10 years there's been almost a revolution in terms of number of new treatments for several different muscle conditions, which we thought before being incurable. Obviously the example of spinal muscular atrophy and the several different new treatments that we've seen coming to clinical trials and also to the market, including gene therapy or other more conventional treatments for the same condition using drugs rather than complex gene vectors have made a huge difference. Obviously, these are come with cost. Those are not cheap treatments, but they had a very big clinical impact. And we've seen similar progress also in other muscle conditions, like in Duchenne. We've seen the approval of a number of new therapies in multiple myopathy as well, and more. This has not been an easy ride so far, and we all know that those treatments have taken a lot of time to be developed, and even now, after they reach clinical trials, we have observed a lot of adverse events, unfortunately, and this has been hard for us to witness, but at the same time, gave us motivation to try to address those problems and focus on try to make the most out of those new treatments. So I would say that all in all, the progress with precision treatments, if you wish, something that targets the genetic defect upstream, the gene change, like we've seen in some of the gene therapies coming, or the treatment-specific therapies like nusinersen, for example, in the case of spinal muscular atrophy. Those have been a real revolution. Now our job is to keep the momentum in a positive way and solve the problems that we've seen in those new drugs, to try to make them safer and more efficacious.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say that you're right with it being, revolutionary. I'm 26 now, and I remember when I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, my parents were told never in their lifetime, let alone my lifetime, would there be treatments. And now, obviously, there's 3 for SMA and
Yeah.
many more coming. So, I definitely agree with you there. And Charlotte, what would you sort of say are your most significant developments that you think?
Yeah, I agree with Saverio. I think, 10 years ago, we didn't have any treatments that were specifically targeting, muscle wasting conditions. A lot of the treatments were very generic, ones that have been used for other conditions. But now we're starting to finally see treatments coming through that are designed specifically for people with muscle wasting conditions, which I think is really, really exciting. For me, I think things like gene editing is really, really exciting, and that's kind of the future that we're starting to move towards, where we're being able to really target those genetic changes within the genes and within our genetic instructions that make up our body and what makes me me and what makes you you. And we know that within a lot of muscle wasting conditions, we have those small genetic changes which can cause the conditions. So being able to actually go into the DNA itself and be able to edit that and those changes, it really brings us hope for moving moving forward for these treatments that are targeting the root cause of the condition rather than just the treatment, the symptoms themselves. And I think that's the most exciting thing of being able to really target the root cause, and potentially, have treatments that can really slow down the progression, potentially even halt the progression, which would be amazing for people with these conditions.
Thank you very much, both. So yeah, we've talked about the fact that we have, these really exciting developments. What is then the next stage? What needs to be done so that these developments can become treatments that are more widely available? Saverio?
That is a difficult question.
Yeah.
Difficult because on the one hand, we all know what needs to be done. The complexity is to make sure things go according to plans. So we have seen, we have in a way inspirations, as I said before, from what the pioneering work that has been done in spinal muscular atrophy, and we are trying to do our best to follow that approach. But at the same time, I think things can be done even better if we can. And for example, reducing the costs of those new medicines is important. And even at the the preclinical, so before they reach clinical studies, the preclinical level is important because that eventually on the long run might result into a cheaper drug, and that might facilitate access to a number of people. We can, I think we can do better also to speed up this process, and this is the process of testing and approval, and we've seen progress in that area already in the last few years. For example, a number of regulators starting to accept as part of the work that is needed to provide evidence that a treatment is potentially working. They are accepting now work done into similar systems to the ones we use. This mini muscle sort of organoid is called type of system, and that helps when, for example, when there isn't a good animal model to use to model a specific condition, and we know that that sometimes can happen. Using animal models is important because we need to have a good degree of certainty that we're not going to see some adverse effects, and we can target the muscles and so on and so forth. But some conditions just don't have a good, for example, mouse will recapitulate some of their difficulties. So, and I think we also need to do a bit better, probably we as a field, I mean, in making sure that when we have something that works, there is a good environment already set there for the industry then to take that product and develop it further. And this has been a bit of a difficult journey for some rare diseases in the last few years, but we've seen also some treatments which were working very beautifully, not being profitable for the industry, and sometimes dropping some of those products. And we've seen also charities or not-for-profit entities stepping in to try to rescue those products from not being accessible in the market anymore. So I think there is a number of things that we should do and we can do, and it's good that there is progress in all those fronts, from the research in the lab to the final approvals when the treatment is working.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I suppose it's really quite an unprecedented time, really, isn't it? And Charlotte, if we go to you next.
Yeah, so like Saverio says, we know what needs to be done. These treatments need to be as safe as possible. They need to be work as well as they can, and bring benefits for people living with these conditions. They need to reach all the cells that are needed as well. So I think one of the bigger challenges is knowing that with muscle wasting conditions, you have muscles all throughout your whole body, from your feet all the way to your head, including your heart and your lungs. So how can it be that we can actually make sure that treatments get to all of these muscles within the body? And I think that's something that is starting to move in the right direction. We're seeing researchers being able to target these specific muscles rather than going all across the body. We know that, if we're given a treatment, it can go to many different cells within the body. For example, it can target the liver, or which can actually be quite toxic and cause side effects. So if we can make sure that these treatments just directly go to the muscles and all the muscles within the body that's needed, that's going to make a really, really big difference. And we're funding some research in that space as well. We have several researchers looking to try and improve this to make sure that we can get them to those muscles, as well as trying to make sure that these treatments are as safe and work as well as they can do. And I think the other really big point here is we need to know for certain that treatments are working, right? The only way that we're going to get treatments through to people who need them is by proving that they work. So we need to make sure that we can find the best ways possible to test these treatments, and to make sure that when they're working in the lab, which we see a lot of the time, like Saverio said, we see these treatments work in the lab, they're in the models that we're testing, that's great. But when we take them through to clinical trials, we're not seeing the same benefit. And these clinical trials are costly. So we want to make sure that we can really bring through the best possible treatments to make sure that we're giving them the best chance possible. So things like Saverio's mini muscles and part of Magic, and the kind of little models that they're creating, which they can use to test treatments on, are really, really important to make sure that we're finding the best treatments to take forward.
Yeah, very interesting space. And so there are over 60 muscle wasting conditions, and the research into treatments to date is quite limited to a handful of the more common conditions. I'm sure our listeners would really like to know what the potential is for a wider impact on all muscle wasting conditions. Saverio, are you able to talk to that?
Yes, actually, that's another excellent question, really, because I work a lot, almost primarily, with rare or ultra rare conditions. So, and often you have this challenge of seeing something that starts to work and is promising. Also, some funders or in industry becomes complicated. So I think one way to probably facilitate access to or development of treatments for rarer and multiple conditions at the same time is, on the one hand, as I said before, to try to have models or systems that make you test that in a faster and cheaper way, so that you get something that has a reduced cost and it becomes generalizable to multiple conditions at the same time. Gene editing is one of the hopes in that area, which, although is currently expensive, complex, and with some side effects as well, he gives us the possibility to have targeted therapies, targeted strategies for multiple conditions using, for example, the same delivery system. You can have the same modified unharmful virus, for example, that is used for gene therapy, that is used across a number of different muscle conditions, because at the end of the day, you want to target muscle in all of them, but what you're changing is the sequence in all of them to address the specific gene change. Now, there is progress made in that front with some of the regulators. There is discussion on, if you're only changing a little bit of this cocktail, do you really need to do all the validation work that you have to do in the first place every single time for every muscle condition? And this is a space where there is a lot of activity going on. There is another interesting approach on that front, and this is something that I recently started to work on in collaboration with other colleagues across Europe in another consortium, actually called DREAMS, which is similar to our MAGIC consortium, but also targeting muscle condition, but with a completely different approach. In that other network, we are looking at common mechanisms across different muscle conditions, so that we can target the commonalities between 3, 4, 5 different muscle wasting disorders with potentially a single drug. So if, for example, if you have 3 conditions and all of them have a specific problem in the way the muscle fiber contracts or moves, well, then you might target that defect, that problem downstream, and that will give you a treatment which works for multiple conditions at the same time. And now this is facilitated also by artificial intelligence. And this is one of the tools we're using in this other consortium, because we have the possibility to screen and test many more things than what we used to do before, making use of AI to do that. So in a way, I think it's good to have the possibility to act on two fronts. On the precision medicine approach, by trying to make that cheaper and faster and more applicable to multiple conditions, but at the same time, also try to find, as I said, common mechanisms across the board that can be targeted. In a way, this is not very new. It's what's been done with many other medicines in the past. Look at, for example, the steroids that are used across multiple different conditions. The difference now that we can do that in a much better and precise way. So we can actually predict what is the common mechanisms across 3, 4, 5, 10 muscle wasting conditions, and go there with a medicine which is specific for that common mechanism. This is hopes. We're not there yet, but things are moving in that direction, and work in the lab is already happening to do that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And Charlotte, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Saverio's covered it there really nicely, I think, and this is something that us at Muscular Dystrophy UK are really trying to work on as well. We've recently released a new research strategy where we want to focus on these commonalities between conditions. We know that there's lots of different, we cover over 60 muscle wasting conditions, and a lot of the time there are shared mechanisms between them. So trying to really understand those, different pathways within the body that happen, and different areas of muscles that are affected, and understanding that is really going to help us be able to find treatments that can help a lot of different conditions. And I think that's one of the biggest ways forward that will have a really big impact on the field, because as Saverio says, gene therapies are so expensive at the moment. I think in the future, and we're quite a way away from it at the moment, but a plug and play type system could become a thing where you could have that delivery system that works and could be used for several different conditions, and then you're just changing the gene therapy inside, so which different genes that is going to target. But we're looking at really in the future for that. So at the moment, can we focus on those commonalities and really pick them apart and be able to find treatments that support those there? But working on both of them at the same time, I think, is really showcasing that there is an urgent push and kind of revolution, as Saverio said earlier, to be able to push forward these treatments and find, treatments for these conditions.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Interesting research happening. I know we've spoken sort of like throughout about this, but finally, what would you say the future holds? What big changes or maybe surprising ideas do you think could transform the field over the next decade? So maybe an area of research that you really think could, change the space.
Mostly from the treatment perspective, you mean, Rebecca, or research in general?
Research or treatment or any really, whatever you think, you
Yeah.
feel really passionate about.
I mean, I think, I am biased in terms of, I think that what we are doing is already in that direction, but
Yeah.
I'm going to try to be as neutral as I can. And I think that the combination of, let's start from what's happening in the labs, right? Let's think about what's happening in terms of what we say, basic science or basic research or discovery science, something that is still on the bench, is not done, not even in animal models. right? I think we're seeing lots of very exciting technologies and things coming up. We are reaching a very high level of precision in making genetic diagnosis and analyzing the DNA from even at the diagnostics level. We're doing things that we weren't able to do until up to a few years ago. And that's already increasing the yield of the diagnosis that we are currently making. I think the next few years might see the uptake of even better technologies to do that, looking at RNA sequencing, for example, for diagnostics, not only for research basis, that might help solving some of the unsolved cases. We see in many clinical centers several patients who don't have a diagnosis yet, and that might help. And coming back to the lab, I think ourselves and a number of other labs are building up models on a dish of the conditions which are more and more precise. So we're saying the possibility now we have the possibility to add almost all different cell types which we know are not working properly in specific muscle conditions in a so-called patient-specific way. So, we can take stem cells from a specific individual and make muscle out of that, motor neurons, cardiac cells, liver cells, all those cell types which are important to understand the disease condition and also to understand the effect of a treatment. We could do that within the space of a couple of months from scratch, which is something unprecedented as well. So I think that offers a lot of opportunities in terms of basic and translational science, so moving from the lab to the bedside, if you wish. We cannot ignore the huge impact that AI is already having in our lives and is going to have on science. You can just type a few words now and you can basically find a lot of information that it would have taken days or weeks to have before. So that's going faster than we think for a number of research projects, particularly when it comes to drug development or screening systems. You can screen things much faster and much cheaper as well than what used to be before. I think we're going to see that happening more and more and more probably to the point, and that's some sort of prediction that I take the liberty to do, to the point that we might have more data that we can actually analyze. So we need to watch that space very, very closely. And then in terms of clinical trials, I mean, things are moving fast as well, and we need to, again, I might sound like a broken record for that, but we might find a way to make sure that all these new things that are coming up in the lab, and now we are getting them faster than before, can go equally faster in terms of clinical experimentation. And this is sometimes difficult when it comes to rare diseases, because there might also not be enough individuals with a specific condition to test some of those treatments. So we need, again, to watch that space and maybe try to have systems in the lab which are as predictive as we can, because we cannot just afford to go every time in a clinical trial without having solid data in the first place. And I think that's going to be also very, very interesting to watch, because, again, there are more and more even computer-based systems to predict efficacy of treatments, even without running an experiment in the lab, just by looking at the data and making what they now call also digital twins, if you see what I mean, of a patient, of an individual. So there is a lot going on, and I think keeping the balance between what we can do on a computer with what we can do with these new models, alongside with more conventional approaches that we still have to use. We cannot just forget about validating some treatments, especially when there is a high risk of side effects into animal models. It's the reality. It's difficult to skip that phase completely, but we can for sure reduce that at the moment in terms of reliance only on those. And things are gonna happen quickly. I think that will be my prediction, which is, I think it's good for everyone, for us, for the patient community. I'm sure, Rebecca, you will only be happy to hear that things can go faster than what you have seen happening in the last few years, even though there's been progress. If I try to look at what we do from the patient perspective, I will always think, great, but can we go even faster? And why not? Maybe we can do it.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. It's so exciting to hear. Yeah, what might happen in the next sort of 10 years or so, and really interesting to hear about how AI is sort of, aiding in that process, because that's something that I definitely hadn't considered. And Charlotte, how about you? What are your sort of hopes?
Well, I mean, if you'd spoken to me, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago and said that, Saverio would be making little mini muscles in the lab that can twitch like a muscle, I would have told you you're watching a sci-fi movie. So I think it's really exciting that research and science is growing every day, and it's incredible the things that researchers can come up with and be able to do. So I'm really hopeful for the future, and I believe that the community is so passionate about being able to find treatments and be able to push the research forward. For me, I think personalized medicine is going to become a bigger thing in the future. We're hearing already of things that are called things like N=1 trials. So these are clinical trials and treatments that are designed specifically for a specific person. So the treatment's designed on that person's genetic DNA and changes. And I think moving forward, we might be seeing more of that. But the question is, how is that going to happen in reality? How is it going to be costed for? How are we going to get that through processes to make sure people can get it available to them? So it's an interesting area, but is it really viable? AI is another big one. And then for me as well, wearable technology and supporting clinical trials. I think technology is coming on leaps and bounds, and being able to make clinical trials more accessible, easy to do for people involved is a really big thing. But also being able to monitor and track changes, even the smallest of changes, really quickly and easily is something that's going to make a big difference. So we're already seeing that now, that wearable technology can be used in clinical trials, for example, in SMA. So we're starting to be able to see if that can be for Duchenne as well. So in the future, we could be seeing people wearing wrist and ankle monitors to be able to monitor movement, and who knows where else it could take us. Like I said, it was a sci-fi movie, just mini muscle. So what else can we get to?
Yeah, no, amazing. And yeah, I think, our listeners will probably be really pleased to hear that clinical trials and that accessibility and less invasive side of things might be coming up. So I think that's really great. And I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much to both of our guests for such an interesting discussion. I found it really, really interesting, and I'm sure our listeners have too. As part of our new organizational strategy, over the next decade, one of the 4 key strategic goals will be focusing on helping to accelerate the development of new treatments for every condition. If you have any questions or would like to know more about our research work, please contact us on research@musculardystrophyuk.org. And if you are interested in finding out more about the MAGIC Consortium, you can search for MAGIC Research Projects. If you would like to send in any suggestions for future discussions on Muscles Matter podcast, or have any questions following today's discussion for us or our guests, please contact us on podcast@musculardystrophyuk.org. And don't forget to subscribe for alerts when the next episode is out. Have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to the next time.